Okay, welcome everyone to our Sunday services. I hope you've all had a great week. Today we're going to start off with a prayer read by Bita and then a reading read by Bayan.
O thou kind Lord, praise be unto thee that thou hast shown us the highway of guidance, opened the doors of the kingdom, and manifested thyself to the Son of reality. To the blind thou hast given sight, to the deaf thou hast granted hearing. Thou hast resuscitated the dead. Thou hast enriched the poor. Thou hast shown the way to those who have gone astray. Thou hast led those with parched lips to the fountain of guidance. Thou hast suffered the thirsty fish to reach the ocean of reality, and thou hast invited the wandering birds to the rose garden of grace. O thou Almighty, we are thy servants and thy poor ones. We are remote and yearn for thy presence, are athirst for the water of thy fountain, are ill, longing for thy healing. We are walking in thy path and have no aim or hope save the diffusion of thy fragrance, so that all souls may raise the cry of, O God, guide us to the straight path. May their eyes be open to behold the light, and may they be freed from the darkness of ignorance. May they gather around the lamp of thy guidance. May every portionless one receive a share. May the deprived become confidents of thy mysteries. O Almighty, look upon us with the glance of mercifulness. Grant us heavenly confirmation. Bestow upon us the breath of the Holy Spirit, so that we may be assisted in thy service, and, like unto brilliant stars, shine in these regions with the light of thy guidance. Verily, thou art the powerful, the mighty, the wise, and the seeing. Abdullah.
The purpose of the one true God, exalted be his glory, in revealing himself unto men, is to lay bare those gems that lie hidden within the mind of their true and inmost selves. That the diverse communions of the earth and the manifold systems of religious belief should never be allowed to foster the feelings of animosity among men is, in this day, of the essence of the faith of God and his religion. These principles and laws, these firmly established and mighty systems, have proceeded from one source and are the rays of one light. That they differ one from another is to be attributed to the varying requirements of the ages in which they were promulgated. The utterance of God is a lamp whose light is these words: Ye are the fruits of one tree and the leaves of one branch. Deal ye one with another with the utmost love and harmony, with friendliness and fellowship. He who is the day star of truth beareth me witness. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you. So we're so excited this morning to announce our speaker, Kevin Locke, and his topic will be Overview of the Spiritual Heritage of This Half of the Planet. As you all know, or may know, Kevin Locke is a world-famous visionary hoop dancer, preeminent player of the Indigenous Northern Plains flute, traditional storyteller, cultural ambassador, recording artist, and educator. Kevin is Lakota and Anishnabe. While his instructions were received from his immediate family and community, from extended family in every part of the world, Kevin has learned many lessons in global citizenship and how we can each draw from our individual heritages to create a vibrant, evolving global civilization, embracing and celebrating our collective heritage. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Locke.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the friends over there for inviting me here. And I wanted to give a little background. My the interest that I got in this whole topic was through my mom, and my mother was the first Indigenous person to serve on the on the on the what are they, it's called, in the National Spiritual Assembly. She was the vice chair of the NSA. She served on the NSA of the U.S. for 8 years, and when she was born in the 1920s, and her parents were from the 19th century, and so then when she grew up, she always heard so much about the spiritual heritage of this hemisphere, of this land, from the older generations, and they would always attribute the spiritual heritage of this hemisphere to these divine personages, messengers. And so one of the projects that she was really involved in was to shed light on this spiritual heritage. And so then after she passed away, a lot of that work was unfinished. And I always thought it would be great to pursue it. And then I don't know if you can see the slide. There's at the bottom here, it has Christopher Buck. Is that slide up there? Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so Christopher Buck, and Christopher Buck is a scholar. He's really a fantastic scholar. And I think over 30 years ago, he began researching the different messengers of God that appeared on this hemisphere. And notably, he began to research the peacemaker, who was from the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois people. And he began to publish scholarly works on the teachings and of the dispensation of the peacemaker. And so I was so fortunate to encounter him and to collaborate with him. And so then I suggested that we put together something like a slide presentation or a PowerPoint presentation. So you can see this one is, we put this together on April 14th. But I really have to credit Christopher Buck with his research, and we've collaborated quite extensively with the Baha'iTeachings.org, and I think something like 66 articles now. So anybody who wishes to pursue this can take a look at that. And I wanted to mention something else, which is I think really interesting, and that is that I have this book. Can you can't see this book, can you?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
It's called Teton Sioux Music. It's published in 1918. And anyway, there is the first Baha'i pioneer to Standing Rock came here in 1963. And this was her book. Her name was Audrey Reynolds. And she read this book and she was so inspired because this lady, she's an ethnomusicologist. She came here to do research in 1911, but no individual would talk to her. And finally, they all agreed that the only way they could share information is if they took charge of the research. And so these elders, all these elders from around here, they got together and they consulted, and they shared with her. It's in the book that the only way that they could share information was if they got to the root of the culture, of the spiritual heritage, which was this messenger, this woman who came here in 900 AD and brought the divine laws to the people. And that's at the very beginning of this book, and they shared all that information. So anyway, this is part of the spiritual heritage, which the immigrant populations who have come here in the last few hundred years almost know nothing about. So I'll do a little quick overview here of this, and like I say, it's a work in progress. But this is the prophecy of Abdul Baha. He says, this is in the Tablets of the Divine Plan, page 33. He says, attach great importance to the indigenous population of America. Likewise, these Indians, should they be educated and guided, there can be no doubt that they will become so illumined as to enlighten the whole world. So this is a well-known prophecy. It's a conditional prophecy, and it's from this very foundational document for Baha'is. It's called the Tablets of the Divine Plan. And anyway, so I'll just kind of go through a little bit of this these slides. I think it's so well done, but it's talking about, and I can share this with anybody and make it available and the references and everything. But it's this prophecy is conditional, but there's quite a bit of discussion here about how it can be fulfilled. And this is exciting times now because we're living at a time when all of these human resources are being raised all over the world. And so this is a little discussion from with quotes from the Universal House of Justice about how this process can be accelerated, and the commentary about how this prophecy of the contribution of the indigenous population can be accelerated. And here's some really nice pictures. You know, just a little bit of background. The first place, I think one of the first places in the world where this what they call entry by troops, and I know this is some Baha'i jargon, but it just refers to this masses of people recognizing the message of Baha'u'llah. One of the first places this occurred was in the region around Lago Titicaca, Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. And so that's where they had, I guess, probably hundreds of thousands of Baha'is early on there. And there's quite an interesting, if anybody's interested, there's an interesting documentary by this prominent Baha'i. Her name was Ruhia Khanum. It's called The Green Light Expedition. I think you can find it on YouTube, but I'm not sure. But right now there's a lot of so much activity going on down there. You can see some of these pictures are from Panama. This is from Panama, and there's some very nice documentaries about the activities going on in those areas down in that area. And then make sure if anybody does have any questions on any of this, just feel free to jump in because I'm going through this quite fast. Here's some of these. So anyway, these this has to do with the time process associated with the fulfillment of those prophecies, and this synergy that has to take place between the indigenous populations and the in this case, like the Baha'i communities. And one of them is just the recognition, and this is something I think which is really interesting, especially for Baha'is that are participating here, and that is that Christopher Buck's wife is Persian. Now, unfortunately, out in this area out where I live out in the Dakotas, there's no Persians out here that I know of. There's none. We don't have a lot of diversity here, but one of the elements that we're missing is Persian population. But anyway, my collaborator Christopher Buck, his wife is Persian, and she went through a lot of some of the youth academies in Iran when she was young, and they studied this tablet. This is not what it's called. This is just what it's come, but it's not called the tablet to Amir Khan, but this is just a way of identifying it. But for Baha'is, this is kind of like the Holy Grail. When Abdul Baha says, and undoubtedly in those regions, referring to the Western Hemisphere, the call of God must have been raised in ancient times, but it has been forgotten now. So here it is, and transliterated into Farsi right here. I mean, that's the original. But it may be that the immigrant populations, if they ever did know about it, they might have forgotten it. And it was suppressed. I think for the participants there, you probably know that immigrants came here to this hemisphere. Many of them came ostensibly to escape religious persecution. But when they got here, as you probably know, they mislabeled the indigenous people here as devil worshippers or satanic or heathen. And so they were proceeded to, hundreds of years of policy of extermination and, physical and cultural and spiritual genocide. And it wasn't until 1978 that the American Indian Freedom of Religion Act was passed by Congress. So just think, it took 500 years before the indigenous population was able to achieve freedom of religion. I mean, it's not funny, but it's just so ironical. That's my only response is to laugh. But even though it was repressed and the people were persecuted, but still, just like my mom would always comment, is that people kept this alive. People kept these teachings alive. They never let it die out. And so this is the way she was brought up, was everything was referencing these divine luminaries, divine educators. And she always talks about how her parents would have to secretly, take the kids out. They'd go and to participate in devotional practices that were outlawed and banned. So anyway, so here it is. It's an affirmation from the one of the central figures of the Baha'i faith about the existence of those who raised the call of God. And this is another way. Apparently, this is a way of referring to the messengers of God. And so then this just has something about how, about the reference that you can't add messengers of God, but just allude to their existence. And then now we've done quite a bit of work in identifying and describing each of the individual divine luminaries. And so these are the references here to the articles in BahaiTeachings.org right there. And one of the most notable of the divine messengers is the peacemaker, who appeared in ancient times amongst the Haudenosaunee. And it was always given as in the oral tradition, amongst the Haudenosaunee, the 6 nations, they're called the 6 nations, that reside both on the U.S. side and the Canadian side of the border. But throughout time, there's people have been designated to keep that oral tradition vibrant and alive. And so the way they do that is that they periodically, every year, in all the communities, they do the recitation verbatim of the law, the great law of peace. And then this man here, his name was John Arthur Gibson. In 1912, he dictated, and he didn't speak any European language, but he dictated in Onondaga language. And so it's a lengthy document. It's called Concerning the League. And it's just a fantastic recitation. And it's available. People can find it here. That's Concerning the League. Anyway, it doesn't give too much of the citation. It's through the Algonquin and Iroquois linguistics. It's quite a lengthy document. And here's a section of it. I can just read this here. It says, thirdly, this is what peace means. Now it will stop the massacre of humans and the scalping and bloodletting among themselves, specifically among the people of the various nations. Now, the prelude to that is that when the peacemaker appeared, there was just a bloodbath that was going on. But anyway, he says, now as to that, it will end the human slaughter because the Great Spirit never planned for humans to hurt one another, nor to slaughter one another. So now it will end the warpath, and everywhere it will become peaceful. The different nations, villages are as neighbors. And as to the localized families and their children, what will happen is that they will all be very close relatives, and it will come to pass that it will become just like one family, which will encompass every nation and every language. And this, when everyone can travel from village to village, then it will end the danger and terror, and everything will be peaceful, and they will rejoice by day and by night as the family continues on, there being no end to peace. That is what it means, the great law of peace, and everyone will be united. Now I am finished. And that's from the Peacemaker, and that's part of the verbatim tradition, oral tradition, and that was given by Chief Gibson in 1912 in Onondaga language. And another of the most notable of the messengers of God that appeared on this hemisphere was this, her name was, we say Ptehincha Laskawi. In English, that's White Buffalo Calf Woman. And when she appeared, according to the testimony that was given by the preeminent tribal historian here at Standing Rock, his name was Ishnala Wicha, which translates, "He alone is a man." But he was designated to give the teachings, and these are, we just say 10 commandments, but it's not really 10 commandments. These are he distilled her teachings, and here they are right here. And essentially, it's just the golden rule. It's the same as what all the messengers throughout the world have brought. And you can see them here. And you can see the last one. He says, above all, lead pure lives. Lead pure lives. And so this is the foundation of all of the teachings, is this the teachings of purity, of sanctity, of chastity, all of these things. And this is preeminent among all the laws that were brought. And then this is the essence of her teachings also. And one of the things that, and I'll kind of wrap up here just in case there's any questions or any comments that people have, because I can just go on and on this topic. But one of the things you can see here is that possess great respect and reverence towards sacred things. And this is really all of creation. It's really all of creation because, this is a universal law, and that is that, like we understand that that all of creation is one. It's all the handiwork of one creator, one fashioner, one maker. And that, so then there's the physical world that we live within and we experience, and we're having this, this physical experience throughout our lifetime. But then there's the spiritual realms, which are beyond our, as human beings, are beyond our capacity to fathom. But all of creation is the handiwork of one maker. So they use this principle that everything in the world is a physical manifestation of a spiritual reality. So in other words, like, we can use that theme and realize everything in this world, the physical world, is a counterpart to something in the spiritual worlds. And so this is the basis to all the great teachings throughout the world, the parables of Jesus and so forth. And I don't know why, but the immigrants, when they arrived here in this hemisphere, they mislabeled or misinterpreted the indigenous people as nature worshipers. And somehow this is still in the popular mind, but it's not that at all. It's just a universal theme. So they thought, well, these Indians are worshiping that mountain. But not at all. No, it's just that mountain is emblematic of maybe divine principles of majesty or grandeur or loftiness or sublimity, something like this. Or maybe they thought, oh, those heathen Indians, they're worshiping that eagle. No, not that. It's just that the eagle somehow represents, it's like a counterpart to some spiritual principles of nobility, or maybe the ascendant nature of the human spirit, something like that. Does that make sense? So that was all misinterpreted. But even number 7 says, show kindness towards every living creature on earth. It doesn't mean that we can't swat a mosquito, or, there's all these traditions about how we create this relationship with all of creation. So it's a symbiotic relationship. And so that, the people use the, maybe the bison as a foundation of life. So anyway, we can go through all of these in detail, but I think it's all pretty self-explanatory. And then there's just this quick little review, the sweet medicine. He was the one that appeared amongst the Cheyenne people. They live out here a little ways west of here, the Cheyenne. And one of the interesting things that all of these divine revelators brought, like the peacemaker, they all brought an administrative order as well. And this is kind of an interesting footnote. If you ever look at the so-called founding fathers, they would look at their neighbors, their indigenous neighbors, and see how their systems of governance. And Thomas Jefferson made a quote in which he says, like, how is it that our neighbors can have, meaning the indigenous people, can have a smoothly operating system of governance, and here we are, these great European people, and why can't we do the same? So they did kind of study the great law of peace that the peacemaker brought, in which he instituted a divine administrative order. And so the founding fathers looked at that, but the thing that they missed out on was that in the divine administrative order of the indigenous people, they managed to remove ego out. They took the ego out. So a person cannot run for office in the indigenous systems, but they are put into office based on their ability, their magnanimity, their self-abnegation, their record of service, and they're more or less forced into this. Like the peacemaker made the provision that it's the women who install the leaders, and the women remove the leaders. And so that's the system that they put into place. But the founding fathers of the U.S. got that all wrong because it was all ego driven. Now that's my own editorial comment on that, see? So they looked at it, they admired it, but they didn't implement it correctly. See, that's my own personal view. Because these divine revelators that came, they brought systems that managed to sublimate the ego. So that was one of them. This one here, Lone Man, he's from the Mandan people, the breath maker. This is down in the southeast part of the United States, the Creek, you get down to Florida, the Miccosukee, the Seminole, everything that is good in their way of life is attributed to the breath maker. I don't know how they say that in their language down there. And then this is from Quetzalcoatl, from the founder of the civilizations down in Mexico, in that region, Central America. Viracocha, that's from South America, and so on and so forth. So anyway, I think I'd like to maybe just say about that much. And if there's any questions or comments, I'd be so happy to hear that at this time. Maybe our moderator has
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, so now we'd love to have your questions or comments. You can either write them in the chat or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and I will unmute you.
Yeah, you can take that take this off if people want to see each other. That's fine.
Okay, yeah, I'll take this off.
Yeah.
Stop that. Okay. Now
Oh, there you go. Everybody's
we
here.
now we have a question from Emmanuel. I will unmute you now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. What strikes me, I mean, in the last few years, I had really the privilege to be acquainted with the Polynesian culture in the Pacific Islands. And it's striking that in the Pacific Islands, they have the same kind of messenger of God from the ancient times. And actually, well, I mean, with a lot of similarities with the Baha'i principles. I mean, respect for the earth and generosity, resolving conflicts by consultation, and material equality between the populations, the diverse populations, very similar to the Baha'i principles. And what's interesting, when you listen to the elders over there, they say that they are messengers of God in the ancient times, said that the whole world one day will come back to those principles. So it seems it's not only the Native American population here in the Americas, but maybe other indigenous populations in other parts of the world have the same principles. It's quite interesting.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. In the Baha'i writings, it's in a compilation called Gleanings, and I'm going to try and do my best to quote it. It says, "Unto the cities of every nation, He," referring to God, "He has sent His messengers, whom He hath commissioned to announce the glad tidings of the paradise of His good pleasure, to draw them nigh unto the haven of abiding security, the seat of eternal holiness and transcendent glory." So this is why they're so parallel, because all these teachings are from one source. And I think we can really, it's really a great consolation that we realize that nobody has been left out of this divine process, that basically all peoples have been given a portion of grace from one loving Father, one loving God. And so it's really a wonderful thing, especially now we live in a time we can see that there's a great ingathering of all the diverse peoples, and we all have these great gems and jewels and gifts now that we can share. And I think really we're just opening our eyes to this now. And this is one of the things that's happening in all over the world, like in the United States with the this is just my own personal view, but unfortunately this tragic death of George Floyd, but it's creating such an acceleration of people's consciousness to realize how really we have to expand our thinking to be more inclusive of people that have been so marginalized and repressed. And this is what John F. Kennedy said this in 1963, the former president. He was assassinated, but he says the American Indian is the least understood and most misunderstood American. So it's probably more true today than any time in the past, But I think for me, even though this tragic events have happened, it's all accelerating this process of people coming together and understanding each other. So I thank you so much for sharing that about the Polynesians. The Polynesians, they inhabit some of the largest territory, but they're far flung. That triangle goes, I think from down around New Zealand up to they say Aotearoa, up to Hawaii, and then out to Easter Island. Those are or they call it Rapa Nui, but those are the people I think you're talking about, the Polynesian people who are, they mastered that technology of navigation, and it's being revitalized, and that's a divine gift. This is just a little side note, but I have been out there, and people think it was just a haphazard process that they colonized or that they inhabited those areas, but people said that the Holy Spirit, and this is what I heard from Polynesians, that that people were inspired through dreams and visions, and they would set out in that direction that they had envisioned, and they would set their course on that, and they would, sure enough, they'd make landfall. So it wasn't just a haphazard process, but it was a very interesting mystical process. Anyway, I won't get into that, but thank you so much, Emmanuel, for sharing that.
Thank you. Okay, so our next question is from Tom, and he says, "Dear Kevin, what caused you to recognize Baha'u'llah?"
I was, that's a whole long story. I wrote a whole book about that. It's the Baha'i Publishing Trust is called Arising. You can see that. That's not a commercial plug, but anyway, just in a nutshell, what it was that I had so many questions, and I would just pester people around here, right around this area, no end. And they said that the only way I could get my answer to my question was to go out fasting. They have this traditional law of fasting. It's universal, but I just go, out into the prairie wilderness here on a mountaintop or hilltop, and you go out there 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no water. You can get up to like 100 degrees, 110 degrees, and just kill yourself. But that was the path I set for myself, and I'd say I really believe that's what led me to meet the people that I heard about the Baha'i faith from. And we were talking earlier before the program about this lady. She lives in Fargo. She's actually full-blooded Arab heritage, but she was born and raised here in North Dakota. She's in her 90s now. She was raised as a Muslim, speaking Arabic, but she later became a Baha'i, and she began to have firesides. And through those firesides, people went all around, this whole region all over, and that people who, through that process, I heard about the Baha'i faith from. So it's a long story. It's really a long story, but I've written extensively about it. Yeah, thanks so much for asking that.
Great, thank you. So I don't see any other questions yet, so I'll give you all a chance to raise your hand. Okay, we have a question from Erwin. Let me unmute you. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, thank you for a wonderful talk. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I was just wondering if you have any favorite prophecies from any of the messengers in this hemisphere that stick out to you regarding the coming of Baha'u'llah?
Well, the prophecies only take on meaning in the context of, after they've been already fulfilled. So, we can, if you're standing from the platform of the succeeding manifestation of God, and you look back at the prophecies of the messenger from before, then all those prophecies kind of come to light. They all make sense. And so then, yeah, we do actually, there are prophecies they were brought by these divine messengers. And probably the most outstanding of them that I can think of would be these prophecies concerning like these metaphors or universal archetypes. And it has to do with the tree of life, like the tree of life. And this is really such a central teaching, especially out here in the prairies, you know, the tree of life, which represents the axis mundi, which is, you know, the center of the world. And it represents the connection between heaven and earth. It represents represents is a physical representation of, you know, the presence of God or manifestation of God in the world. And so then this is one of the main themes, and like the prophecies, the way I understand it, is that this tree of life will take root in the world, in the center of the world, and all people will gather beneath it, and the branches will reach out and be filled with flowers and birds. So it's a great metaphor, a great analogy. And you know, of course, another one would be that the springtime would pervade and envelop all people. And so we can see these are just allusions to this, this time that we're living in now, which is a divine springtime. It's the springtime that autumn shall never overtake. And now we're living at the very beginning of it. But it's such a privilege to actually live at a time when we can witness this, and moreover, to awaken to the possibility of our part in accelerating that process. And we really have that so clearly now before us, you know, exactly what we can do to be a part of this. You know, I just on that point, remember, this is years ago, probably before your time, but, you know, they had this, there was all this, random acts of violence and everything. So then there was this movement, and then they had these bumper stickers to encouraging people to go out and commit random acts of kindness and then senseless acts of beauty. So it's pretty good for a Baha'i, but the thing about it is there's nothing random or senseless about it, because it's all part of a process that we're invited to participate in which we can do create kindness and beauty, but do it in a very systematized way, in a very orderly process. So it's just this process of unfoldment, exactly like when you see spring happening, like out where you are or out here in the prairies, and you see it, there's this beautiful order, how everything unfolds in sequence, and it's a very beautiful sequence, you know, like the birds and the insects and the plants and everything coming out in sequence. And this is exactly what's happening in the world today. And we are a part, we are the embodiment of these forces, these life giving forces. And now is the day to release that into the world. And, you know, this is what I really like now, because we can see especially in the United States, we've been playing out this horrible drama for hundreds of years now. And the drama is, and you probably, I don't know, maybe people who are recent immigrants, maybe Persian people or something, you've just got here and you know what's going on here. But I'll just tell you what's going on here in case you don't know, is that for hundreds of years in this side of the world, I know you come from the other side of the world, but here, what we've been doing here for the last several hundred years, we've all been rehearsing our roles. And what our roles are is the enslaved and the enslavers, the conquered, the conquerors, the exploited, the exploiters. All these roles we've been rehearsing, going through it. And it's just like a big, heavy weight, like a ball and chain we're dragging. But you know, but I think when I see all these things happening all over the world, all over the country now, people are realizing we don't have to bear that weight. We have new roles, and what these roles are, and excuse me for getting carried away, but what these new roles are is that they're roles of being active active promulgators of this divine process of the unfoldment, and all the roles are heroic. So every role we can now step into is heroic, and we're all invited now to step into those roles. It's such a great time, and it's great to see so many youth here, because you're the ones that are going to really make it happen. Yeah.
Great. Okay, our next question, I know you already touched on this a little, but someone's asking, what was it about the teachings that caused you to recognize Baha'u'llah?
Well, I'll tell you what it was exactly. Like when I was, before I was a Baha'i, the elders here, they'd help me go out fasting. And finally, I told my uncle, I says, I'm not really getting anywhere with my fasting or anything. And he says, the reason why, he says, because you're not focusing. You don't have a goal. And so then you have to get a goal and pray for that goal. So then I thought, that's a good advice. So then I started listening to people the way they pray in our local language here. And they'd always pray for the road, to find that road. We call it the red road. This is the road that was foretold by this messenger here, the white buffalo calf woman, that she came to mark that road and to put the people on. They call it the red road, the straight, the holy road, the road that God has put in this world. So now I thought, that's my prayer. I want to pray for that. And so that was my goal. I was praying, and that time went out fasting. That was 1979, and it was over 110 every day. I thought, well, I'm going to die. I'm just going to die, but it's okay because life is so meaningless. Then I got done with that, and then I felt so dejected. And then my Baha'i contacts, my Baha'i friends, that came through Marion Kadri, like we were talking earlier. They came to my place right here. I wasn't living too far from here, just a couple miles from here at the time. They came, and they were going to be moving somewhere else. And they said, well, Kevin, we've been telling you about the Baha'i faith, and you know what? We should tell you that we think it's time that you became a Baha'i. And I told them, I said, me too. I said, well, how do you do that? They said, well, you have to you sign this declaration card. Oh, I said, what is that? Oh, it's just an administrative procedure here in the United States. But I said, okay, let me give it to me. And then I said, well, one other thing, question I have is, do Baha'is have prayers? I didn't know, because there's no Baha'is around here. So then I didn't know. And then, oh yeah, we forgot to give you a prayer book. So then they handed me the prayer book, and then I opened that prayer book up, and I just turned to one of these prayers. It's from the Tablets of Divine Plan. And I just turned to that one. I turned to the one for the Central States, and I started reading it. It says, O Lord my God, praise and thanksgiving be unto thee, for thou hast guided me to the highway of the kingdom, suffered me to walk in the straight and far stretching path. So right there, that was what I was praying for. See, that road, that highway. Then I was reading that prayer. The whole prayer talks about our journey on that road, and all the divine blessings that it will accrue to us as we go on that journey. So that was it right there. I realized, that was the answer to what I was praying for all that time. Does that answer your question?
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so our next question is from the Aerosmith family, and they say, what do you believe is the connection between the treatment of Indigenous people and African American people, especially with what is happening around the country right now?
Well, for sure the prejudice, racial prejudice. This is, we know, the most vital and challenging issue, and for sure we know that we all have to deal with this issue, but the black-white is the tip of the arrowhead. That's the tip. So nothing can be resolved until that moves forward. in this country. So we all have to advocate this. It's so paramount. So nothing else is going to really advance until this issue is confronted. It's the most vital and challenging issue. Yeah. And so once we move that down the line, others will fall into place, and we'll begin to open up. Consciousness will dawn. Yeah, it's so basic. That's the most basic one.
Sure. Okay, so Ryan asks, what can we do as individuals to gain a better understanding of Indigenous cultures? Are there any resources that you recommend?
Well, you can go to those articles on the BahaiTeachings.org that Christopher Buck and then I did collaborated on quite a few of them. But this is really the foundation would be to understand these messengers of God. But I think that this whole as a Baha'i, this institute process is going to really open up insights and skills to be a part of the spiritualization process, which has to happen everywhere. I always used to feel frustrated because the indigenous population is the only rural population left in the Western Hemisphere, especially in the United States. Everything's urban. But excuse me, I'm just going to plug this in. But so the indigenous population is the only rural-based population left, and we know as Baha'is are like 99.99999% urban, all urban. So that's hear this prophecy from Abdul Baha. You must attach great importance to these Indians, but how's that going to happen if one of them's only in the urban areas, the other one's in the rural areas? So it's never going to happen. So that used to always frustrate me, but now it's okay because I realize that these human resources are going to be developed, and it's going to happen now. And when I see young people with their potentialities, then I realize it's going to really happen. Recently, I'll tell you this, I had this dream, and then I was talking to my buddy, but my age, upper 60s, that kind of an age. And then this young guy came in and he was bringing coffee and water and snacks and just really attentive. And then, so I asked this is a dream I had, very vivid. And I asked my friend, well, who is this? He said, well, that's my grandson. I said, what's his name? And then he gave the name, and I remember that, but I'd never heard that word before. And the name of that young man was Mumtaz. That's his name, Mumtaz. And I said, well, what's that? He said, I don't know. His parents gave him that name. Then I woke up. And so then I asked my wife, what is that word? And see, my wife is from Turkey, and she only spoke Turkish until her 20s. And then I asked her if she ever heard that word. Yeah, we have that word. She said, it's not Turkish. She said, it's an Arabic word, but it's in the Quran. And so it came into Turkish language through that. Well, I said, okay, good. What's it mean? She says, Mumtaz means somebody who's excellent, outstanding, see? And so then I asked in the context of that meaning, how would you interpret that dream? So my wife says, well, what that dream means, she says that you and your buddy, the other old guy, says, you guys are all washed up. It's over for you. She says, you had your day to make hay, you had your day in the sunshine, but you blew it, you lost it. But that dream means is these young people, these excellent, outstanding people, this is their day. It's their time. I said, well, what about us? I don't know, you guys blew it, but this is at least we can be in a supportive role, right? I said, yeah, maybe you can do that. But yeah, that's what we can do. See, we can encourage young people to accelerate and carry this process beyond anything we could expect. Does that make sense? That was my dream. You ever heard that word? Mumtaz.
No.
It's not in Farsi. Is it in Farsi? No.
Yes, it is.
It is. He says it is. Okay, we got the nod on that. Does it mean the same thing?
Let me unmute her.
Yes, Mumtaz means exactly what she told you.
Okay, okay. It's a loan word from Arabic anyway. Yeah.
I mean, it is Arabic, but
Yeah.
you know, Arabic is in our language. Is
Yeah,
important.
yeah. Turkish too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well, we have another question. Why do you think anti-Black racism is the most vital and challenging issue and not the treatment of Indigenous populations?
Well, for one thing, you know, if you study U.S. history, you know, I was talking about all these roles, but the roles that were played out, all these negative roles, was for exploitation of resources. So then, you know, human beings were all sacrificed. You know, I think it's in the Tablet of the World, Baha'u'llah says, he says, observe the people of the West and see how, it's pretty close, I'm just paraphrasing, how countless lives have been sacrificed in the pursuit of that which is vain and trivial. So here you have millions of people brought over from Africa, enslaved, exploited, and then of course, you know, the indigenous population it was hard for the immigrants to enslave them because they could easily just take off anywhere. They didn't have to stick around to be enslaved. But the population, the policy of the U.S. was extermination, mass extermination. So this is why, you know, conservative estimates of like 15 million, and some people say 30, 40 million people that were here were reduced to 200,000 in the 1900 census. So the whole population reduced down to nothing. So this is, but I don't want to evade the question, but it's just that the U.S. was very successful in exterminating the indigenous population of this land. You see, that's why wherever you live, you go around, you're not going to see indigenous people, right? You're not going to see, you have to come out here, or maybe certain places you can go that were considered uninhabitable. And that's where you can find indigenous people. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just history. I'm not trying to make anybody depressed, but this is why this issue in the U.S. you can run, but you can't hide from it, and that's the racial prejudice. And black-white is the tip of the arrow. It has to be dealt with. You can't. There's no escape. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Emmanuel. I'm unmuting you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, you were talking about disparity between the urban population and the rural population. And if I remember correctly, Abdul Baha actually had some writings about that subject. And he was saying that actually agriculture is very important, and we have to educate people about agriculture, etc., etc. And recently, I was, because I'm from France, I watched the news from France. And in the news, they were presenting some statistics about just after the coronavirus crisis, what did happen in France. Well, according to the research which were done a few weeks ago, you know, Paris is really a big urban area with about 10 to 11 million people. Well, guess what? With the coronavirus and what did happen, more than 40% of the population living in the Paris area, they want to leave that area to go back to the countryside.
Yeah.
So I think we are living also a very historical time in this matter.
Yeah.
And probably in the next few years, we'll see a migration of the urban populations towards the more rural areas where the quality of life is much better, etc.
Very good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I don't know why, there's probably no reason why everybody has to move into cities. I don't think, I don't know. But yeah, but this is in the one of the tablets of Baha'u'llah. I think it's a tablet of the world where he mentions, like agriculture. He says, although we have mentioned it in fifth place, assuredly it is preeminent. So yeah, agriculture is so important. I've got my little garden out here, and one of the things that I'll just mention that is if anybody wants to check it out, we have this nonprofit. It's named in honor of my mom, and one of our main goals is called Patricia Locke Foundation. You can go on the internet and look at it, but we've got this real active project to create nutrition through school community gardens, and it's really a great initiative because this is really a food desert out here. It's we don't have adequate access to food, but we want to create that nutrition foundation here. It's so critical, so important here, everywhere. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we have a question from someone saying that they're a little scared. Will the indigenous people be wiped out? And what is in the writings about their future?
Well, the future is just like in that they shall become so enlightened that the whole world will be illumined. So this is the prophecy from Abdul Baha. So when you think about it, this illumination, this enlightenment, and this is really a beautiful analogy. And the African American population is likened unto the pupil of the eye. Of course, the eye is the organ through which all of light is filtered. That's the lens. And so really, in order to see, we have to have that full spectrum of light. And so this is the analogy given, in the prophecy about the indigenous population, is that the whole earth will be illumined. So really, even though we all have a part to play, but this prophecy is specific to the indigenous people, so that these qualities of light will become manifest. And so people will be able to see things in that perspective. So that I think there's something about, I don't know what it is. I really think it, to me, my own interpretation is that it has everything to do with these spiritual legacy, and the spiritual legacy. And that's why I mentioned of this half of the world, because, the other half of the world has been imposing itself on this half for over 500 years now, and is completely blinded to the legacy of this half of the world. See what I'm saying? So anyway, yeah, so I think it's all an awakening process, and we're just all kind of coming out of a long hibernation, a long winter. And so all of us stand to be enlightened in this process. It's great. It's exciting.
Yes, definitely. Okay, do we have any other questions? I'll pause now. Okay, we do. Hedia asks, what meaningful paths of action can and should Baha'is and our institutions take to elevate and support the works of justice for BIPOC? What do you mean by that? I'm not sure.
I don't know that. BIPOC.
I think, Black and Indigenous people of color.
Oh, I see. Okay, I never heard that. That's really good. Again, it has everything to do with this accelerating this the spiritualization process. And one of the interesting things about the people of color that's an interesting demographic, and that is that they're very youthful populations for the most part, very, very youthful. And like here out in this region out here, you can see that the immigrant populations have not grown significantly. The median age is very, very high, but the indigenous populations here, there, everywhere, the median age is very low. So you can see a lot of kids. And this is like out here at Standing Rock, everybody is so concerned about educating children. So there's a huge, huge opportunity to accelerate that spiritualization process with kids. And that's what, like our nonprofit is all about, is part of that process, like the nutrition, the spiritual, cultural education, all of these things are so tantamount. And, one of the things we're really trying to do out here is to revitalize our language here. And in my generation, when I was younger, everybody spoke Lakota. I just hear it every day, all the time. But now there's very few now, so few. And I don't have too many people to talk to. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I don't think so. But with that, we all thank you so much. We have a lot of comments saying thank you, and we really appreciate your time.
Okay.
Really great learning from you. So next week, our speaker will be Rain Wilson, rescheduled from last week. And he is very sorry that he couldn't make it again. There was a mix-up in his calendar. But he's promised to make this talk extra good for us to make up for it. And you all may know Rain from his role on The Office as Dwight. So now we're going to end with, I'm going to play a Lakota prayer song. So I'm just going to play that now. Thank you again. We'll see you all next week.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye, take care.